Hi, everybody. This is Eric with Smart Pot Fabric Planters, and welcome back to the Growing Revolution Smart Pot Cast. Today, we've got another great episode. We've got a hydroponics industry veteran, Mike Jernigan. He's the owner of Peninsula Hydroponics, which is in Virginia, which is kind of on the forefront of, I guess, cannabis legalization and cultivation. And he's a great supporter of our products. And we wanted to chat with him and see how things are going, on the southeast. So, Mike, thanks very much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So we were recommended to speak with you by our East Coast rep, Anna. So, first of all, we just wanted to thank you for your support of our Smart Pot products. Like, we see a lot of postings on Instagram that you guys do of your place and your garden, and it just represents us really well, so I wanted to thank you for that.
Sure. We think a lot of your products, Anna is kind of described you this way, and I do the same way to our customers. You guys are like the Kleenex of fabric containers. You're the Nike of fabric containers. You're the original, and I like supporting the original companies. Obviously, a lot of folks have tried to copy you since then, and we stock less expensive, slightly less expensive version, but the fit and finish, the quality of the fabric Smart Pot containers are better. No doubt about it, and we always recommend them first because of that, and that's from our experience using them. I have some outside that are over 5 years old that have been outside for over 5 years and are still maintaining their integrity and still functioning. So
my Smart Pots are like 5-6 years old, and I feel like I could still get another 5 to 6 years out of them.
Sure.
They'll accumulate some mineral deposits, but with a washing, they're practically brand new. So thanks for recognizing the longevity and quality of our products.
There's a difference. Really, you can touch them and you can tell the difference between that and interior products. So.
Yeah, online when you're looking at fabric, pictures, it's harder to tell, but once you get it in your hands, it's pretty obvious which one is the best.
Absolutely.
Nice. So, how long has Peninsula Hydroponics been open for?
So this is our 7th year in business. We started in a slightly smaller location, same shopping center, and then we graduated to a bigger one about 3 years ago. And so, 7 years in business.
Awesome. How many square feet is your store?
Our store now is about 1,800 square foot. We're entertaining moving to a bigger building as well. So we're kind of negotiating that right now to a building that's double the square footage with the potential to expand to 4 or 6 times the square footage. So we're entertaining, stepping up so that we can showcase more. Because the challenge with our store is that we're running out of space and we can't showcase all the things that we stock. And so if you you can't tell, you don't know that we have it if you can't see it a lot of times, or people will walk right past something. So planning on moving into a bigger building here shortly. Hopefully everything works out. Negotiating commercial real estate can be challenging. So.
I've dipped my toe into that and took my toe right out of it because it just too complicated.
Absolutely.
So besides yourself, how many other people are working at the store there?
So we have 4 employees, 3 full-time, 1 part-time, and then we also have one person that helps with events and things. So technically 5 employees besides myself, and then my wife is very helpful. She she doesn't receive a paycheck per se, but she does a lot of the marketing and the stuff that you see is many times it's her work. So she's a great job of getting that onto the website and into our social media. She's much better at the social media thing than me. I'm getting there, but definitely.
The women in our lives generally pick up a lot of the slack and do a lot of the behind the scenes work and never get enough credit for really all that they do.
Yeah,
so
she communicates with my accountant and all that stuff. So hours for the employees and things, benefits, all that stuff. So super important part of it for sure.
Now, as far as retailing Smart Pots, have you guys been stocking Smart Pot products since the beginning, or how long have you been carrying them, and what are your most popular sizes?
So actually we didn't. We started with the cheaper ones, a different brand, I'm not going to mention them, but They were, a Chinese brand that, and your rep, Anna, she actually sold us on it, and she brought it in. She gave us some samples. We stocked a few. We noticed the difference in the quality, and then we began stocking them further. So if we started off with just a couple of cases of like 5 or 10 gallon, common sizes, 3s and 5s maybe, and now we stock pretty much every size that you guys make. Anywhere from I think we have from 2 gallon up to 200 gallon. We also stock the long beds in 6 foot, 8 foot, and 12 foot sizes, and we use those in my personal garden here at the house. We actually, but yes, I would say the most popular sizes: 3s, 5s, 7s, 10s. That's. Then we get outdoors here in Virginia. If you're going to be growing cannabis this year, we recommend 30s, 45s or bigger. Depending on the size of plant you're planning on growing. So kind of recommend based off the size of the plant. So
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you're not going to get a 10-pound yield off of a 5-gallon plant.
Right,
so,
right. So
expectations need to match pot size, I guess.
Yeah, and another thing is that something you have to consider here in Virginia is that come July, or especially August, as these plants are getting really big, they're full of vegetation, they transpire really quickly. So these bags dry down quickly, and if you get a 100-degree day with 20-mile-per-hour winds, that's when you'll really appreciate having the larger container. So having a 30 or 45 gallon container, or even bigger, 100 gallon container, means that you have less maintenance. You don't have to water as often, less chance of them, experiencing stress. From drying down too much. Like I said, it really seems the biggest difference I seem to notice is on the really hot, but also windy days. As air is moving past the containers, they can dry down quicker, and also just the plants are transpiring faster.
Yep.
We teach a class. Matter of fact, that's what I was doing last night. I taught a class till 11:30 last night, so we got home kind of late, had a late night last night. But we always recommend 20 gallon or bigger for outdoor plants here in Virginia. I think a 20 gallon container is great for like a 4 foot tall, 5 foot tall plant. When you get to the bigger ones, we had some hemp farms that we deal with. One of my boys, he was growing, his plants ended up around 8 foot tall and around 8 foot wide. They're large plants in 45 gallon containers last year, and he had to water every day. I believe at some points in August he was watering twice a day. So understand that that's I always look at plants as like a pump. They're transpiring constantly, and that draws water into the plant, moves minerals along with it, and that's how how you move certain minerals throughout the plant. And so I kind of use that analogy a lot. I look at a plant as like a pump, basically, or it's a little mini humidifier.
Yeah. In a sense, it really is.
Right.
And I always say the more you can irrigate and feed your plant, the better.
Sure.
But at the same time, is if you're hand watering,
sure,
that could really interfere with your life. But if you automate your irrigation, then you can be a lot more aggressive with your fertigation.
Sure.
Without necessarily taking your life away.
Yeah, the key is planning early in the
hand
season.
water.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as setting up irrigation, we always recommend it. My buddy that had the hemp farm, he also runs a full-time construction business. So he was dabbling in this, and then so he ended up having to have his daughter. I guess she picked up a summer job out of the deal of pretty much watering. It was her whole summer. And so it's a lot to keep up with. And so the more you can automate, the better. Most of the bigger farms that I deal with have irrigation systems in place. And so it's super important if you're planning on scaling up. But also, it's having an irrigation system in place, even with a small indoor grow, allows you to be able to leave for the weekend or to be able to go out of town for a week. Last year I was fortunate to go to Colorado for a week, and I went to Maine for a week. And my plants did not miss a beat the entire time because I dialed it in, had a chance to observe it before I left, and then they didn't miss we had a great yield. The plant no extra stress.
Yeah, a dialed-in, irrigation system is much better than having a buddy come over to water, because who knows if that buddy's gonna come over on a certain day,
something might come up with them, right? They could get sick, they have kids, whatever, and usually 9 times out of 10 that's what happened with me. And so, and I don't want to put that responsibility on somebody else. It's my, job. It's my, I don't want to have to inconvenience someone to come over and water my plants for me. And also, like I said, sometimes they wouldn't do it the way you would, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it can lead to a problem down the road. Yeah, so
Yeah, our
um,
plants are kind of like a ball and chain. Once we start them, we're
yeah,
kind of tied to them.
married to it, just like in my business, and
Yeah,
so yeah, it's a but luckily we have lots of options, and there's ways to integrate irrigation systems that don't have to break the bank,
yeah,
and do a good job. So
yeah,
getting better and better at that part of it.
yeah. So, in Virginia, you guys recently passed some of the most progressive cannabis laws in the country, certainly in the South.
Hmm.
Can you tell us about how that's impacted your business?
Yeah, it's impacted it tremendously. Now we can talk about growing cannabis. We can, it's especially important. The recreational aspect is important, right? But we have lots of medical patients. We have patients that are battling crippling diseases. You know, Parkinson's disease is one of my customers in particular. He's found this guy was always taught that cannabis is bad. It's his whole life he was always against it. He had been in a government job for 35 years and was terrified of losing his pension, his retirement, ever getting a hot
Sure.
cannabis test. His brother also has Parkinson's, and he discovered that cannabis really helped, and he was able to go off several of these medications that had terrible side effects, visual side
Yeah.
effects, trails, things like that. And he lives a better quality of life now. He's actually retired now, but when he first came in, he couldn't really ask the questions, and we really had a hard time answering them with staying within the law. Obviously, I wouldn't want to compromise my business, and so now we teach classes. It went from us not even being able to talk about it to now we can actually coach and teach classes and help people diagnose their problems. You can bring in a plan if they need to. So it's definitely changed that part of the business. It's helped us, grow and become smarter because as we answer questions, we learn too. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been great for us. And like I said, the medical patients is it's especially nice to be able to help those folks, veterans, guys with PTSD that have terrible nightmares and things that I've had a few customers that say that cannabis was helpful for that. I'm not one of these guys that says it's a cure-all, but for certain things it's helpful. And it's if someone's going through, I'm not going to tell you it cures cancer, but if someone's going through chemo, it can help with the loss of appetite and things of that nature. And we've seen it firsthand, real world. And
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to be able to donate my last grow to some of those folks. So I
Nice.
don't hustle or sell anything anymore, and so it's cool. I get to grow these plants. We get to use it for our marketing, and I get to give it away to folks that need it. So pretty neat to be able to kind of give that part back.
Yeah. So you'd say that your typical customer is the home grower who's just using it for personal usage then?
Yeah, we have some commercial hemp accounts. Obviously, we have about 50 commercial hemp accounts that we deal with. But
Oh, nice.
yeah. So we cater to that aspect too. That became legal 2 years before recreational cannabis did in Virginia. So we were looking to have kind of a little bit of a foundation of that to get going, because then we could actually talk about cannabis. Obviously, we couldn't focus on the marijuana end of the spectrum, but hemp we could. The CBD market's huge here in Virginia. We have a lot of military here. We have 7 bases within 25 miles of me, right? So we have the F-22 Raptors, the baddest airplane in the world, is a quarter mile from my back door. So we have some really neat military installations around here. And a lot of these folks obviously can't consume marijuana, THC. So some of them have used CBD for medical issues. So yeah, nice to have that. But the average customer now has changed. It's a lot of these guys that want to grow the 4 plants that we're allowed to. And the funny thing is, some percentage of them, I don't know, maybe 5% of them, don't even use it. They're growing it for a friend or a neighbor or a family member that has a medical problem, or just because they can. It's been outlawed here for 80 years in Virginia, with the exception of about 2 years during World War II, where the government encouraged the production of hemp for a little bit. But there's a generational loss in the knowledge of how to grow cannabis in Virginia. Being illegal for 80 years, really, these farmers around here, they're smart guys. We have, Virginia has some really, really excellent farms, but they're experts at growing corn and soybeans and cotton, all these different food, vegetable crops. But there's a generational gap in the knowledge of growing cannabis plants, and so we help fill that void. We actually, when we teach our classes, I can't tell you how many hemp farm or large-scale farms, the owners have come and taken the class to understand cannabis, because like I said, they're experts at growing corn or whatever, but This one is it's treated different. It's
Yeah.
specific.
A plant is a plant, you know,
Right.
so there's going to be a lot of crossover
Sure.
between species, but cannabis is, in my mind, you know, just kind of sticks out there
It's
as
unique.
being a plant that is so unique in how it grows. And I can't think of another plant that can vary so radically in the final product based on, you know, nutrients used, weather,
Sure.
you know, the grower techniques, and
Sure.
it's an amazing plant. So it makes sense that you have a percentage of customers who just want to grow it for fun because, you know, really it's the ultimate plant to grow. Like when you get it dialed in, like you're just smiling from ear to ear.
Oh, it is. It's my absolute favorite plant. We grow 8 deep varieties of heirloom vegetables every year too, so we like it all. But cannabis is unique. And the cool thing about cannabis is there's so much genotype or phenotype variation from seed to seed. You can take 100 seeds from the same crop, one that's stable, but it'll never be homogeneous like a Better Boy tomato. You'll never get the same. You know, you grow Better Boy tomatoes, you're going to get 4 to 6 ounce tomatoes. They're going to grow to this height, and
Yep.
and they're going to be. It's going to be hard to tell the difference from plant to plant.
Yep.
Cannabis is different. They're like snowflakes. You know, every seed is different, and you can grow 100 of the same seed, and every one of them will be different, and to some degree. And that's what makes it so unique, and it makes it like treasure hunting. You know, if you find that one special one, it might stick around for a generation. And we have one of those here in Virginia. It's called the Virginia Beach Afghani. Yeah, and it's been here for over 30 years, and it's still highly sought after. You know, only a handful of guys have it. It's pretty much what a lot of growers cut their teeth on here. When I was learning to grow, I wasn't in the circle of guys that had it. I wasn't in the circle. I didn't have anyone to teach me. I had the Jorge Cervantes Growers Bible. You know, that was it. You know, none of my friends were into it. I was kind of on my own when it came to learning and getting
I
up to
didn't
speed
feel
on the
like you
plant.
can really talk about it with strangers,
No.
you know, being in Virginia.
Even if you knew someone that had the cutting or you heard that they did, you couldn't ask them, you know, and because you weren't supposed to know. So, but now all of that has changed. One thing that we did differently than I think some of the other businesses here is that I did my own little seed crops. I don't consider myself a breeder. You know, I think to do breeding, you need to be doing 100 plants or more for your sample sizes and your pheno hunts. But we had some really good cuts that we were fortunate enough to be given or bought even, and so we did some of our own crosses, some of our own little pollen chucking events, and we were able to give away seeds for free so that people could try to understand without breaking the bank. One of the things that when the laws first changed here in Virginia, the news agencies were all reporting the same thing. Cannabis, marijuana is now legal in Virginia. You can grow your 4 plants, but there's nowhere to buy seeds. Buying seeds is illegal. They wrote it into the legislation. They wrote it into Senate Bill 1406 that you're not allowed to sell cannabis clones, seeds, unless it's hemp.
So it's just
and it has
supposed
be farm
to
farm.
appear out of thin air, and people are just
Right.
supposed to
So I
magically
think,
grow cannabis.
and I'm sure some of the politicians enjoyed that aspect of it, not being, writing that part
Who
in.
knows
You know,
that, you know, politicians aren't the smartest people, so
No,
who knows,
we've
you know,
learned
what
that.
they were even thinking.
I've been fortunate enough to go talk to them. I would say fortunate. I mean, surprised. I was surprised that the folks that I thought were actually fighting for the plant, they really weren't. You know, they didn't have the interest in it, or their interest was not necessarily for the people. It was for self.
Yeah, they're just riding the bandwagon probably more than anything.
Right. And so, but fortunately, because they did not have a great understanding of the plant, they wrote the rules in a way that really benefited our business and Virginians. And it allows for the medical facilities not to completely take over and monopolize the industry, even though they tried to. What it allowed to do is now everyone can grow 4 plants, and so that was great for my business. And it wasn't intentional, but it worked out, I think. And now, like I said, now we've been able to help folks with the seed giveaways that we did. The only way you could do it is if it was completely free. You can't do any gifting schemes. They learned that from DC when the laws changed.
Yeah.
There, guys were selling a T-shirt for $50, and you get a free eighth, or you get seeds or
Right.
clones or whatever. And so they wrote that specifically into Senate Bill 1406. So for that reason, we talked to our lawyers and we discussed it. And I was like, "What can we do?" And the only thing we figured out was that we could give away seeds completely for free without expecting anything in return. Had to be on private property. Folks had to be at least 21 years old. So we followed all the rules, and I bred my own seeds. I dedicated my plants to seeds, not for smoke, and not to consume myself. And we did these seed crops, and we gave away 2,000 packs of seeds last year.
That's a really smart idea because it pretty much guarantees a customer base when you do something like that. It's here's some free seeds, but
not everyone was on board
stuff
with
to grow it with.
Some of the folks that talked about it are like, oh, people are just going to come grab seeds and ditch you, whatever. And maybe. Some folks did, yeah. But what we learned was about 1 in 4 customers actually came back and bought something. And like I said, we did outside of the building, so there was no financial transaction related to it in any way, and because that's how you had to do it to be legal. And so folks were free to leave. It wasn't even inside of our door, and so you could grab seeds and leave. And we encourage people, hey, take them. We don't care, and if you want to come back, your butt. Right, and if you want to come back and support us, we really appreciate it. Thanks for supporting our local business. And the feedback we got was incredible. We were able to take a cutting that was a great cutting from a breeder that was from Virginia, and we crossed it with a male that I selected from another breeder from Virginia. Turns out there's a bunch of guys that came from Virginia that went on to do great things in the industry. Skunk VA and all these guys that bred the original Kent dog, and which went on to make the original OG Cushes and things like that, the original sour diesels. The folks that bred those plants were from Virginia. And so pretty neat history here in Virginia. There's always been an underground market here. It's a part of our culture that I think a lot of folks don't realize. You think of Virginia as being really conservative, South, all this stuff, but it's been here forever.
Our first presidents were hemp farmers, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
Like, come on.
Yep, and so it has deep roots, but it has deep roots here in Virginia, and so for that reason, it's an important crop here, and it's going to be a very important crop moving forward. Some folks call Virginia the little Napa Valley, of the East Coast, and we do. We have the Blue Ridge Mountains. We have really great sources of water out there, some elevation for a little more UV light. As we know, the higher up you get in elevation, more UV is available, which can help with oil production in the plants. So I think that's probably going to be the best outdoor growing region in Virginia. We're over here on the coast, obviously, so a little different. Yeah. It has a history here, and I'm glad that finally we can showcase that. So and the seeds, the seeds that we gave away, I can't tell you how many people have come back and said that the seeds that we gave them for free were better than anything they bought. So how cool is that, right? It's cool. They got to do some pheno hunting for me. It was neat to see people's feedback, and it was nice to do something for free for folks.
Oh, heck yeah. So Virginia, we mentioned, has a pretty good climate for hemp cannabis in absolutely. General. Mm-hmm. What are some of the intricacies of, growing indoors or outdoors in Virginia's weather?
So one of the things you have to pay attention to here in Virginia is obviously in summer we have hot, humid weather. We have coastal storms, hurricanes. Sometimes we have some really obnoxious or crazy thunderstorms and things like that, depending on what weather is moving through. But the main thing is hurricane season, August, September, October. We have to pay attention to those because even a tropical storm can wipe out your outdoor crops. Another thing to understand here in Virginia is we have different pests here than you would find in, say, the high desert of California or on the West Coast, right? So
what are you guys dealing with?
So we have red and two-spotted spider mites. Those are a common problem throughout the country. One of the things that if you decide, so one of the reasons we steer folks away from planting in the ground, especially if it's an area that you've already previously been gardening at, is because being that we're right in the middle, we're fortunate enough to have northern and southern root knot nematodes. So we have this root pathogen, root pest, I should say, that can cause a tremendous amount of damage to your crops, and so that's one of the reasons we steer folks towards containers, to eliminate that as a variable.
Nice segue.
No, it's a real reason. That's the reason we went to raised beds in my garden. We could not grow okra, we could not grow heirloom tomatoes after a few years because of the concentration of nematodes, and there's no good pesticide to combat nematodes. It's not cost effective for anything that's out there. Fumigation is only available for commercial farms, and I don't want to use stuff like that anyway. One of our big
No.
concerns here in Virginia, I do a lot of fishing and diving. That the rest of my life revolves around the water, and so the Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary on the East Coast, and so it's another reason why we steer a lot of folks towards growing organically. Not always; it doesn't always make sense to do it that way, but we're concerned about runoff here. Phosphate runoff is what causes red algae blooms. That causes dead zones in the Chesapeake Bay, and you have to be here to see it. It's terrible, and so anything we can do to kind of combat that is important to us. And so growing containers gives you more control over that. Growing organically leads to less phosphate runoff. So we want to make sure our runoff is good for the environment. And so that's one of the reasons we encourage growing the way we do. Also, you can avoid problems like these root knot nematodes that we discussed. So there's several benefits, to growing in containers here. And that's part of the reason we kind of push on that. So
Awesome.
yeah.
A lot of people don't even think like, oh yeah, my soil is fine, there's nothing in there, but nematodes is something that you really can't even see without a microscope,
right?
or a soil test analysis. So you might be thinking you're good to go, but
right.
You might be throwing your plants into some garbage soil.
And the problem is with nematodes, when you damage roots, just like with root rot, it can mimic every other type of deficiency. So your plants have the all overs, if you will. So they have they're showing every deficiency, and you can't figure it out. Or am I overwatering? Am I underwatering? Do I have root rot or some other pathogen like fusarium or something going on? And really, it's these nematodes that have just destroyed the root system, and you cannot tell by looking at the plant. One of the most susceptible crops that we've grown is okra. So if you want to figure out whether you have them, plant some okra, and if they struggle, they're very easy to see on okra roots. You'll see these knots all over the roots, these nodules, and galls they call them. And so that's a great way to figure out if you have them. Heirloom tomato plants, the galls are a lot smaller, so it's harder to tell. And a lot of times when you pull the plant out of the ground, you rip the roots off, and you rip these galls off. So you have to excavate around the plant, loosen the soil, and then you can diagnose the problem. It baffled me because I'd always run these giant okra plants, 10, 12 foot tall plants, and then all of a sudden they failed to thrive. Even if I moved them to a different part of the garden, they failed to thrive. And I was thinking it was a fungal problem or all these different things. So I'm using all these different pesticides, and finally I figured it out. And I actually got some really great videos and pictures of it, and it's something we'll probably put into a YouTube video down the road so we can show folks what they look like and how to avoid them moving forward. And so that's what we did here at my house.
Yeah, that's some great information. I'm sure a lot of people are battling nematodes and they don't even know it. So,
yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this stuff for a while, and it caught me off guard. Other things too. When you buy plants from nurseries, a lot of times you're bringing in problems. I remember the first time I had broad mites. I bought plants from a nursery that one of these big, like Bonnie nursery, one of the ones that ships them all across the country, and unfortunately, that's how they spread bugs that were never here before. Russet mites were not a thing in Virginia 10 years ago, and now they are.
Yeah.
Same thing with broad mites. They didn't exist here 20 years ago, and so now we have different problems than we used to, and it has to do with the way we move food across the country, the way we ship it in from other countries, and then some of it was done on purpose by the Department of Agriculture. Like in California, they brought russet mites in on purpose to combat roadside weeds. So and that's why they're here now, and unfortunately a bunch of the hemp farms had terrible problems with them. There was one guy specifically that he was in a pilot program, and he was allowed to grow hemp plants before everyone else, and he also decided he was going to sell clones to all these farms, sold 1.2 million clones, and they all had russet mites. And so basically these guys, it was their first time growing hemp. They bought clones from this guy thinking he knew what he was doing, and unfortunately it was a Trojan horse right into their farms. And then they can survive over the winter. And so now moving forward they can't use this field anymore. And so if you can avoid that, and that's what we try to do, is get people past the learning curve on that. One of the things we offer is consulting, so we go out to these farms and find the problem. And
Nice.
That first year of farming here in Virginia for hemp, it was russet mites for everyone. And you're seeing a lot now as folks are attempting to illegally sell clones on Facebook and stuff like that. They're not done on purpose. Russet mites are tiny. You need 60x magnification to see them well, and you're not going to see one or two. You're not going to see 5 or 10. You're not going to see it until there's thousands. And so, again, those are pests that are really, really small. You can't see with the human eye, and they can mimic every other problem. You look like you have every deficiency in the book, and ultimately it's a pest. And so that's another thing we do, is try to help folks discern or tell the difference between a deficiency and a pest or a pathogen. So.
And that's the type of customer service that you're only going to get from your local hydro store. You know,
Sure.
You're not going to get that from the big box retailer online.
That's
certainly.
it.
So support your local hydro shop.
That's why we made it. It's because we can answer questions and we can look at a picture or help folks diagnose. And my employees are great, man. They're awesome. They've come, we're all learning at the same time. And I try to teach them. They're search sponges. I try to teach them everything I know. Whenever I'm telling a customer or troubleshooting something, they're listening. They're right there with me. And as a team, we're getting better and better and better. And I'd put my guys up against anyone. So.
Awesome. So I had one last question for you.
Sure.
I kind of saw, from one of your postings online, not in the recent past, that.
Yeah.
You had a run-in with the law that was cannabis related
Sure.
back in the day,
Yeah.
and you've kind of turned it into a success story. So I was wondering if you would feel okay sharing that story with us.
Absolutely. It was March 3rd, 2010. It's funny when you can remember an exact time and date, that was significant in your life, and it was significant in a negative way. But Hampton police raided my house. They had a warrant for a totally different person, a 50-year-old man by the name of Bud, and I was 26 or 27 at the time, and they came in, 8 deep, guns to my head, all that stuff. They trashed my house, and they asked me, who do you work for? And I was like, I'm working 2 jobs and going to school. What do you want to know about first? And they kind of changed their tone after that, and they stacked my house, and they found 5.5 ounces of marijuana. In Virginia, that's a felony. You're
Sure.
1 to 5 years in prison for 5 ounces of weed. And so they took me down and booked me and all that stuff, and I had to hire a lawyer. And like I said, they didn't even have a warrant for the right person, but they never showed me a warrant. They didn't give me a chance. They put guns to my head. They put the warrant face down, and they never showed it. They took me into the room and tried to question me, and I know better than to be. You fight that battle in court. You don't try to be a smart boat to the cops, right? You don't try to. You show them respect while they're there, right? And they tried to question me, and I said, I know you're just trying to do your job, but I'd like to go ahead and exercise my Fifth Amendment right. Luckily, I was old enough and mature enough at that point not to say anything that was going to hurt me, And I mean, we did. I fought the battle in court, and at that time, like I said, I was working 2 jobs and going to school, so it was tough. It was a punch in the gut. I had just landed an internship with an engineering company. My court date for that specific charge, my court date was for the same week. They had offered me a full-time position, and so the same week that I was supposed to sign paperwork to come on full-time was the week I had court, and I was praying that their HR department didn't find out, and it was tough to hide that, to come in every day and pretend like that's not going on and still do your job, and it hurt, man. Nothing good came from that. I'd like to say, I learned a lesson or something, but I didn't. This is something that we know is useful, and it's been used in human medicine for 5,000 years. So since before the pyramids were invented, it's been illegal for 80. The relative side, that's a tiny amount of time in relation to how long we've used this plant. And now we see the laws going back the other way. So all these folks have been put in jail over guns to their head. I used to deliver pizza, and I remember twice while on delivery seeing a house get raided where they killed someone's dog. One of them they shot and they were chasing, they were trying to find it, and the other one they killed, and they had raided the wrong house actually. And so not just that, I mean, and so animals obviously is terrible, but how many people over the years have been killed in the same type of situation. Luckily in Virginia they did away with no-knock raids warrants, so
good.
They stopped doing these nighttime and it's high risk, not just to the folks that they're raiding or trying to capture or whatever, but also to the police officers. And it's a hugely unpopular, it was hugely unpopular war on drugs here in Virginia, specifically with the marijuana, that pitted the residents against the civilians against the police, and it was completely unnecessary. There was no gain from it, and now we're seeing it be reversed. and I think it's a great thing. I'm really happy to see it happening. It's unfortunate that so many people were harmed over these laws, myself included. I still had to eat. I fought that charge in court. I still had to eat they offered me a misdemeanor charge, and I talked to some of my friends that have been, in worse shape than me, and they said, if they offer you misdemeanor, even though they had a warrant for a totally different person, you could probably beat it, take it. And also, I didn't have the money to fight it. You're talking about another three or $5,000 in lawyers' fees, with the potential of it going the wrong way too. And so they offered me misdemeanor possession charge in place of that felony, and I signed the papers. And so I ended up having a restricted license. And had to go to court, work every day, and like I said again, pretend like nothing was going on. It was depressing, man. It was tough, but I made it through it, and stronger now. But
I think a lot of people in your situation probably would have taken the deal. If you don't have money to fight it, there's the risk of going to jail if you lose. It's like, well,
and that's when we talk about like privilege and stuff like that. The rich kids don't go to jail. It's poor kids that go to jail. And I don't come from money. And so I couldn't go and ask my dad, parents to borrow money for a lawyer. I didn't even tell them I got in trouble.
Yeah.
I was been disappointing to them. And so I did it all on my own. And ultimately, now I started this business on my own too, without any help from anyone. And now we're thriving. It's a great thing. Like I said, nothing good came from that. I would have been way further ahead if it didn't happen. But I guess the only good thing that came is now I have a success story that I can tell to other folks that have been in the same situation. Hey, it's not the end of the road or in the world, and you're gonna have to fight a little harder than everyone else that didn't, but it's doable, and now
I saw a good quote a while back that said the war on drugs is over and everybody lost, and I think. And I think people are starting to realize that, especially, more in the news we hear of like how opiate deaths are like one of the leading causes of death for people who are like under 65, and that is just 100% unacceptable.
Right.
And if the more people we could get using cannabis for their issues versus opiates, the world would be a better place.
I tell you, I had a great pain management doctor. I've had 3 surgeries on my left foot, and now I have a titanium plate, 8 screws in it. Unfortunately for me, cannabis wasn't helpful with pain, but it wasn't like it was just nerve pain. It was mechanical grinding of bones, so it was different. It wasn't very helpful for me. But when I was talking to that doctor, he was saying that having marijuana as another tool in his bag was such a great option. It was totally for it, but completely frowned upon by a lot of the medical community because of laws, and so that's all changing. And he was a great doctor. And now he can recommend cannabis in place of opioids. And if it helps you, like for some folks it helps and some folks it doesn't. We all have different endocannabinoid systems. It affects everyone differently. That's why some folks smoke pot and they get anxiety, and some folks when they smoke it takes it away. And so it's not a blanket fix for anyone, but it's useful. It's an extra tool in the bag for these folks. And if it does help someone, man, it's great. It's a great thing. There's no disadvantage.
God created cannabis, so to say cannabis is bad, then you're saying like God is fallible.
Yeah,
which might be. Who knows?
Yeah, but and the other thing is like, what are they? There was a study done in, I think it was in Israel, and they were talking about this. It's the only plant that has like 90 different cannabinoids, and it has all these unique traits to it. It's a very unique plant. It's here for a reason. Like I said, it's been used in medicine for long before civilization was, or long before the United States was thought of, right? Yeah. And so, and like I said, in the grand scheme of things, it's only been legal for a very small fraction of that time. So,
Virginia is going in the right direction with things. I don't know all the ins and outs out of their laws, but it seems to be one of the better ones in the country, and hopefully the rest of the country can kind of see the example of Virginia, Oklahoma, not your traditional cannabis states legalizing it and not having the world end. Hopefully federal prohibition will come down sooner than later.
I'd like to see North Carolina go next. I think that'd be great. North Carolina is kind of on the cusp, I think, and one of my friends went to jail over stems and seeds. There was no actual marijuana in the bag, and they took them to jail in North Carolina. And so they've done some decriminalization efforts and stuff like that. So it's different now than it was, but I'd like to see that change. And hopefully Virginia will be a good example. One of the things we try to do is steer our customers. Don't make Virginia look bad. Here's the rules. You're allowed 4 plants. If you end up with a few extras and get caught with them, it's a $250 fine up to 10 plants. 11 to 49 is a misdemeanor, and over 50 is a felony. There's no reason to have over 50 plants. If you do, you're asking for it, and you kind of deserve what you get at that point. There's no reason why you can't stick to the rules. And if you go a little over and get in a little trouble, that's one thing, but catching a felony is different. That stays with you for life. And so there's no reason to do that, I think, in Virginia. So we try to steer folks in the right direction. Sometimes guys come with ideas that don't really make sense. I saw one guy get busted with about, I think he got over 50 plants, but a bunch of little plants this big. I'm like, why are you doing that? There's no reason to do that. Stay within the rules, or close to them, and don't put yourself in that spot, and don't give the politicians a reason to take this away from us. Yeah. I've seen in other states where they walk laws backwards. I think it was in Arizona or somewhere out there where they made it to where you couldn't grow your own plants within a certain distance of a dispensary. So if your house was within 15 miles of a dispensary, you can't grow again. And so they walked some of these rules backwards. And so I don't want Virginia to give Virginia any reason to walk this backwards, to take this right away from us. It's a great right. The floor is reasonable. Got a little heat on a post about me growing 4 plants and getting almost 3 pounds from 4 plants. I have no reason to exaggerate. You don't have to prove it to, but I did. I got almost 3 pounds. It was like 45.5 ounces.
I saw your pictures. It looked legit to me.
So it actually kind of fueled me though. Getting 3 units from a fixture is like, that's the industry standard for commercial, right? And pulling that from a tent is a little more challenging. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I do it for a living. I better be able to, And so I was trying to showcase what you can yield from that size space. So I talked to my wife about it, and I think not this grow, but I'm going to end up doing another 4-plant grow and showing what's possible under a 680 watt light LED. And what my thought is when we go and process the plant, when we actually do the dry trim and weigh it out, have like 10 people come over. We all trim it together real time, maybe live stream or something, so that there's no way it can be faked or someone can't call my bluff, or whatever. And I think that'd be cool to do. Let me prove it to you. I don't have any reason to exaggerate. So and if it doesn't make it, I want you to see that too.
Well, if you're hitting 3 pounds of light in a tent, you're crushing it. And
I mean, 2.5 is great. If you're hitting 2, you're doing good, and most people aren't going to be mad at that. But
I'd be happy with 1 pound per light.
Sure,
that's more than enough for me.
and with hitting 3 pounds to a fixture inside of a 5x5 grow tent, there's other things you have to have. Obviously you need CO2, you need very good control over temperature and humidity and all that stuff, and we have all that. So that's why. Where that grow, I was using mineral-based fertilizers. I was using Mills Nutrients, great guys, great company. Cocoa drained to waste, and we did very well. The previous grow, I was growing organically, and it was closer to 2.5 pounds. Again, that was using super soil top dressing with Pride Lands amendments. Mammoth peat. I had some teas and some things that we used to
but
get
still 2.5 doing organic is outstanding.
And for most folks, that's all you need. That was way more than I need. I've never given away so much pot in my life. It was cool to be able to do it. And then moving forward, I'll be sharing my recipe and how I got there and what I did, and here's my temperature and my humidity and what fertilizer I used and what EC and what and all that stuff, and all the details, so that folks can repeat it, and so that they don't necessarily have to go out and buy cannabis from anyone. They can have their own, and it'll make you end up kind of being a little bit of a weed snob, because once you've grown your own, you have different appreciation for it, or
as you should, and I think every cannabis user should give a shot at growing a plant if they can, if the laws allow and if they have the time and the space, just to have an appreciation for the plant and its intricacies and difficulties in
What's
growing
funny,
it, so.
I'll share one little story. So one of my neighbors around the corner from me, he's a narcotics officer, 35 plus years with Hampton, and it probably has something to do with when I was getting raided, but he says it didn't. When the laws first changed, I was walking my dog past his house, and he felt that he'd come talk to me. That's what I do for a living. And so, he's like, "Well, if I got in trouble for the plan, I think your record showed me wipe clean." And he's still against it. Within a month, he came by and showed me pictures. He was growing himself. He was growing marijuana himself, and he was over the legal. That's good. But it's funny how quickly it changes. It's funny how quickly it changes. This is something that was beat into their heads, but once they see it and put their hands on it, it's like, oh man, this, you had me all worried about this thing, and really, it's not that serious of a threat. It's not a threat.
It's just
at all.
a plant.
It's just a plant, and so it's funny to see how quick those things change. Someone that was completely gung ho against it, was now they're growing their own.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that just goes to show, even the most ardent, haters of cannabis can be turned into believers. I'm sure all of us know a few people.
I've watched
like
it firsthand.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully that's a trend that continues going forward. So
yeah.
Mike, this has been a really interesting, informative conversation. It's been awesome to get to know you and learn about what's going on out in Virginia. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to following your guys' progress. And can you tell people where they can follow you on like Instagram and stuff?
Sure, Peninsula Hydroponics on Instagram. That's also Peninsula Hydroponics on Facebook. We have a website, peninsulahydroponics.com. That's it for our social media for the most part. That's where we do most of our marketing, though, and we talk about events we have coming up. We'll be doing an event at a brewery here in Hampton, a cidery called Sly Clyde's. A couple days after 420. 420 is in the middle of the week this year, so it's kind of not logical for a lot of folks to be celebrating in the middle of the week with the work week and school and things going on. So we will be the Sunday afterwards. You can see us at Sly Clouds. We have a really cool event going on there. And then we will be having an open house on April 30th. We'll have seeds available again. We'll have some really unique, awesome crosses. We'll have a bunch of things that we'll be giving away. Some smart pots will be given away. We have multiple different lights that we'll be raffling. And so that should be a great event for anyone that's interested or that wants to come check us out. But yeah, follow our social media pages. That's where we do all of our marketing and keep folks up to date on what's going on at Peninsula Hydroponics.
Awesome. Everybody in the coastal Virginia area, get your butts down there to that event. Pick up your beans. Awesome.
That's right.
Well, Mike, thank you again for joining us on The Growing Revolution, and we'll be in touch.
All right. I appreciate it.